The unseen eyes Scout Commander Thexara pressed her four-fingered hand against the cool metal of her ship's observation deck, watching the blue and green world rotate slowly beneath her cloaked vessel. In her 3 centuries of service to the Kethvar Empire, she had observed dozens of worlds destined for conquest. This one, designated as Target World 774 by Imperial Command, appeared remarkably similar to the others. Primitive settlements scattered across the surface, basic energy signatures indicating early fusion technology, and most importantly, a complete lack of awareness regarding her presence. The Kethvar Empire had perfected the art of conquest through careful observation. Their advanced cloaking technology allowed reconnaissance teams to study target worlds for cycles, cataloging defenses, population centers, and military capabilities before the main invasion force arrived. It was a methodology that had brought 43 worlds under Imperial control without a single failed campaign. Thexara's elongated skull bore the ritual scars of her rank, marking her as one of the Empire's most skilled scouts. Her large, multifaceted eyes could detect electromagnetic signatures across 17 different spectrums, while her enhanced neural implants processed tactical data faster than most species could form conscious thoughts. She had personally conducted the preliminary surveys for 7 successful conquests, each one following the same predictable pattern. Subcommander Vextal approached from the ship's central command station, his movements silent despite his considerable bulk. The Kethvar had evolved on a high-gravity world, resulting in dense muscle and bone that made them formidable warriors. But their technology had advanced to eliminate the disadvantages of their physical nature. "Commander," Vextal spoke in the clipped tones of military efficiency, "our deep-range scanners have completed the initial planetary survey. The results are quite encouraging for Imperial interests." Thexara turned from the viewport, her attention shifting to the holographic display that materialized between them. The image showed the 3rd planet in this system, with various colored indicators marking points of interest across its surface. "Present your findings," she commanded. Vextal gestured to the display, causing red markers to pulse at specific locations. The inhabitants have established major population centers on all primary landmasses. However, their military installations appear to be concentrated in only 12 primary locations. Our analysis indicates a total defensive fleet of approximately 400 vessels, primarily concentrated near their largest continent. The information confirmed Thexara's initial assessment. Like most primitive worlds, the inhabitants had clustered their military assets in obvious, easily identifiable locations. Their technology appeared adequate for local defense, but laughably insufficient against Imperial weapons. "Population count?" she inquired. "Approximately 8 billion inhabitants across the planet's surface. Remarkably high for a single world, but this should actually work in our favor. Large populations typically indicate advanced agricultural and industrial capacity, making them valuable additions to the Imperial workforce." Thexara nodded approvingly. 8 billion workers would significantly boost the Empire's productivity, especially given this species' apparent adaptability to various environmental conditions. The planet showed evidence of habitation in extreme climates, from frozen polar regions to vast desert expanses. Any signs of advanced defensive technology? Energy shields, orbital platforms, or long-range detection arrays? Vextal consulted his data tablet before responding. "Negative, Commander. Their orbital presence is minimal, consisting primarily of small communications satellites and scientific observation stations. No military platforms detected. Their scanning technology appears limited to their immediate planetary vicinity." This was excellent news. Most worlds that posed any challenge to Imperial forces had invested heavily in orbital defenses. The absence of such installations suggested that conquest would proceed smoothly, with minimal resistance from space-based assets. Captain Elena Rodriguez checked her chronometer as the UES Horizon completed another routine patrol through the outer system. 3 months into her assignment commanding this Vigilant-class scout vessel, she had yet to encounter anything more exciting than the occasional asteroid or malfunctioning satellite. The outer patrol routes were generally considered safe assignments, perfect for breaking in new crews or giving experienced officers a respite from more dangerous duties. Rodriguez had earned her command through 15 years of distinguished service in the Terran Colonial Defense Force, including action during the Titan Rebellion and the subsequent peace negotiations. At 38, she was young for a ship commander, but her tactical instincts and calm leadership style had impressed her superiors sufficiently to warrant the promotion. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, announced Lieutenant James Park from the sensor station. "Unknown vessel approximately 15,000 kilometers off our starboard bow." Rodriguez moved to the central command chair, her training automatically engaging combat protocols even though no hostile contacts had been detected in this sector for over 2 years. "Can you identify the vessel type, Lieutenant?" Park's fingers danced across his control interface as he attempted to gather more detailed information. "Negative, Captain. The contact appears intermittently on passive sensors, but active scanning returns inconclusive results. It's almost as if something is interfering with our detection systems." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Sensor malfunctions were rare on modern vessels, and the Horizon had just completed a comprehensive systems check prior to beginning patrol duties. "Set intercept course," Rodriguez ordered. "All hands to general quarters." This could be a disabled vessel requiring assistance. As the Horizon altered course toward the mysterious contact, none of the crew realized they were approaching the most advanced reconnaissance vessel in the known galaxy. The Kethvar cloaking technology was specifically designed to appear as sensor ghosts or system malfunctions to primitive detection arrays. Aboard the hidden scout ship, Thexara watched the approaching human vessel with professional interest. The ship's design was adequate but unremarkable, typical of species that had achieved basic spaceflight but lacked the advanced materials and energy systems that characterized true galactic powers. "Commander, the human vessel is approaching our position. Should we withdraw to maintain surveillance security?" Vextal inquired. Thexara considered the options. Direct contact with primitive species was generally avoided during reconnaissance missions, but occasionally it provided valuable intelligence regarding their capabilities and intentions. The approaching vessel appeared to be a military scout, which could offer useful information about their defensive doctrines. "Maintain position. Prepare to decloak on my command." This presents an opportunity to assess their reaction protocols and gather intelligence on their military structure. As the UES Horizon closed to within 5,000 kilometers of the alien position, Rodriguez found herself staring at what appeared to be empty space, according to their sensors, while her instincts insisted that something significant lurked just beyond detection. "Captain, I'm reading massive electromagnetic interference directly ahead. It's almost as if something is actively jamming our sensors," Park reported, confusion evident in his voice. Before Rodriguez could respond, space itself seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Gradually, a vessel unlike anything in human design philosophy materialized before them. The ship was easily twice the size of the Horizon, with flowing curves and organic-looking surfaces that seemed to shift and move in the starlight. "Red alert," Rodriguez commanded calmly, though her heart rate had significantly increased. "All stations report readiness status." The alien vessel hung motionless in space, making no aggressive moves but clearly possessing technology far beyond human capabilities. The fact that it had remained completely hidden until choosing to reveal itself suggested surveillance capabilities that Earth's military planners had never considered. Thexara studied the human ship's reaction with satisfaction. The vessel had gone to what appeared to be maximum alert status, but showed no signs of calling for reinforcements or attempting to flee. This suggested either remarkable courage or complete ignorance of the danger they faced. Given their primitive technology, she suspected the latter. "Open a communication channel," she commanded. "Let us see how these humans respond to first contact with a superior civilization." The main screen of the Horizon flickered to life, showing the interior of the alien vessel. Rodriguez found herself looking at a creature that was clearly intelligent, but utterly non-human. The being stood approximately 2.5 meters tall, with distinctive cranial features and eyes that seemed to analyze everything they observed. When The alien spoke. The universal translator system managed to provide a reasonably coherent interpretation, though the mechanical voice carried an unmistakable tone of superiority. Human vessel, I am Scout Commander Thexara of the Kethvar Empire. Your species has been selected for evaluation regarding potential integration into Imperial territory. Do not attempt to flee or summon assistance, as such actions would be both futile and inadvisable. Rodriguez felt her blood run cold. Integration into Imperial territory could only mean one thing: conquest. However, her training emphasized the importance of gathering intelligence during any first contact situation, regardless of circumstances. Commander Thexara, this is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. You are currently in sovereign human space. While we welcome peaceful contact with other species, any threats against human territory will be met with appropriate response. Thexara's expression shifted to what might have been amusement. The human's defiant response was typical of primitive species when first confronted with imperial power. They invariably attempted to project strength they did not possess, clinging to outdated concepts like territorial sovereignty. Captain Rodriguez, your species' courage is noted and perhaps even admirable. However, you should understand that the Kethvar Empire has successfully integrated 43 worlds into our domain. Your planet's defenses have been thoroughly analyzed, and we have determined that resistance would be both costly and ultimately unsuccessful. Rodriguez realized that this conversation was being recorded by both sides and would likely serve as humanity's first official diplomatic contact with an alien species. Unfortunately, that contact appeared to be the prelude to an invasion. Commander, what exactly do you mean by integration? Are you proposing some form of alliance or cooperative relationship? Integration involves the incorporation of your world's resources and population into the imperial structure. Your species would be provided with appropriate work assignments based on your capabilities, while imperial administrators would ensure optimal resource utilization and population management. The clinical description of slavery and conquest, delivered in such matter-of-fact tones, triggered Rodriguez's anger despite her diplomatic training. What you're describing sounds like conquest and enslavement. Humanity does not accept such arrangements. Thexara consulted her data display before responding. Captain Rodriguez, your species currently maintains a defensive fleet of approximately 400 vessels and military installations at 12 primary locations. The Imperial invasion force assigned to this operation consists of 800 warships with ground assault capability sufficient to occupy any resistance centers. Cooperation would result in significantly reduced casualties among your population. Rodriguez kept her expression neutral, but internally she was amazed by the aliens' intelligence failure. Either their scanning technology was far less advanced than their cloaking system suggested, or they had somehow completely missed the true scope of human military capabilities. Commander, I believe your intelligence regarding human defenses may be incomplete. Perhaps you should conduct more thorough reconnaissance before making any irreversible decisions. Thexara's mandibles clicked in what served as a Kethvar expression of dismissive amusement. Captain, our reconnaissance methods have proven accurate across 43 successful campaigns. Your species follows the typical pattern of concentrating military assets in obvious locations for maximum deterrent effect. Such strategies are understandable, but ultimately ineffective against Imperial technology and tactics. As the conversation continued, Rodriguez made careful mental notes of everything the alien revealed about their intentions and capabilities. The information would be crucial for Earth's defense planning, assuming she survived to deliver it. Commander, before your empire makes any final decisions regarding human space, might I suggest a formal diplomatic meeting? Surely a civilization as advanced as yours recognizes the value of negotiation over military action. Thexara considered the request. Formal diplomatic contact was unnecessary since the outcome was predetermined, but it might provide additional intelligence regarding human leadership structure and decision-making processes. Captain Rodriguez, such meetings serve little purpose when the outcome is already determined. However, I will relay your request to Imperial Command. They may find value in observing your leadership's response to inevitable conquest. The communication ended abruptly. leaving the Horizon's bridge crew staring at empty space as the alien vessel re-engaged its cloaking system. Rodriguez immediately ordered maximum acceleration toward Earth, while simultaneously broadcasting urgent messages to Colonial Defense Command. As the Horizon raced toward home with news of impending invasion, Thexara completed her preliminary report to Imperial Command. The humans appeared to be a typical primitive species with predictable defensive patterns and admirable but ultimately useless courage. The conquest of Target World 774 would proceed according to standard Imperial protocols. Neither the alien scout commander nor the human captain realized that their brief encounter had set in motion events that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. The Kethvar Empire was about to discover that some assumptions prove fatal, while humanity was about to demonstrate why predators should choose their prey more carefully. General Marcus Chen read Captain Rodriguez's report for the third time, each reading confirming his worst fears and best hopes simultaneously. 40 years of military service had taught him to recognize pivotal moments in history, and this was undoubtedly one of them. Humanity faced its first contact with hostile, alien intelligence, but that same contact revealed that the enemy had made catastrophic intelligence failures. Director Kim, what's your assessment of their reconnaissance capabilities? Chen asked the woman sitting across from his desk. Director Sarah Kim, head of Colonial Intelligence Services, consulted her tablet before responding. General, based on Captain Rodriguez's description of their cloaking technology and the specific numbers they provided, I believe they've observed only our most obvious military installations. They seem to have completely missed the distributed defense network. Chen nodded grimly. For the past century, human military doctrine had emphasized redundancy and distributed assets following the lessons learned during Earth's devastating global conflicts. Rather than concentrating forces in vulnerable centralized locations, human planners had created overlapping networks of hidden installations, reserve units, and civilian militias capable of sustained resistance. How long do we have before their invasion force arrives? Unknown, sir. However, if they're following standard reconnaissance protocols, I estimate we have between 2 and 4 weeks before the main assault begins. Chen activated his communication system, preparing to issue orders that would mobilize humanity's true defensive capabilities for the first time in its history. The Kethvar Empire was about to discover that their reconnaissance had revealed less than 10% of human military strength. As alerts began sounding across human space, the greatest military mobilization in human history commenced in complete silence. The hidden truth, Admiral Krelthis, stood in the command center of his flagship, the Sovereign's Will, reviewing the final intelligence reports as his invasion fleet approached the target system. 800 of the Empire's finest warships accompanied him, along with ground assault forces numbering in the millions. It was a force capable of reducing planets to ash or conquering them intact, depending on the level of resistance encountered. 3. Preliminary reconnaissance conducted by Scout Commander Thexara had provided an unusually complete picture of the target world's defenses. The humans maintained approximately 400 combat vessels of varying capability, concentrated primarily around their major population centers. Their military installations followed typical primitive patterns with obvious command structures and centralized supply lines that could be easily disrupted. Admiral, called Fleet Tactical Officer Morthek from his station, we are receiving updated intelligence from the Advanced Reconnaissance Team. Krelthis moved to the tactical display, where a three-dimensional representation of the human home system materialized. Red indicators marked known defensive positions, while amber zones highlighted areas of uncertain threat potential. The display showed exactly what he expected: a primitive system with modest defenses concentrated around the most valuable strategic targets. Present the final assessment, he commanded. Morthek activated additional display layers, causing the human defensive positions to pulse with varying intensities based on their estimated threat levels. The humans have maintained their predicted defensive posture. Their fleet strength remains at approximately 400 vessels, with primary concentrations around their homeworld and 2 major colony installations. Ground-based defenses appear limited to surface-to-orbit missile systems of moderate capability. The Admiral studied the display with satisfaction. His invasion force outnumbered the human fleet by 2 to 1, while possessing overwhelming technological superiority. Imperial warships carried energy weapons capable of penetrating any known defensive screen, while their armor could withstand sustained bombardment from primitive projectile weapons. Any changes in their patrol patterns or alert status? Krelthis inquired. Negative, Admiral. They appear to be maintaining routine operations with no indication of enhanced readiness. Either they remain unaware of our presence, or they lack the capability to significantly alter their defensive posture. This was excellent news. Many primitive species attempted last-minute military mobilizations when faced with Imperial conquest, but such efforts typically resulted in poorly coordinated defenses that were easily overwhelmed. The humans' apparent calm suggested either admirable discipline or simple resignation to their fate. 3 light-years away, General Chen stood in the primary command center buried 5 kilometers beneath the Colorado mountains, watching displays that told a very different story than what the aliens believed they were seeing. Every screen showed green indicators as human military units reached full operational readiness across the solar system and beyond. All Colonial Defense Forces report ready status, announced Colonel Martinez from the Communications Center. Luna. Base Mars Command and Titan Station are fully operational with all reserve units activated. Chen nodded, though his attention remained focused on the tactical display showing actual human defensive capabilities. Unlike the aliens' simple assessment, this display revealed the true complexity of humanity's military structure. Thousands of installations ranging from major fleet bases to hidden weapons platforms formed an interconnected web of overlapping defensive zones throughout human space. Director Kim status report on the deception protocols. Sarah Kim looked up from her intelligence station, where multiple screens showed alien surveillance activities in real time. General, our electronic countermeasures are successfully maintaining the illusion of reduced defensive capability. The alien reconnaissance units continue to detect only the installations we want them to see, while our actual fleet strength remains hidden. The deception had been surprisingly easy to maintain. Human military planners had long ago recognized that obvious defensive installations served primarily as decoys, drawing enemy attention away from more sophisticated hidden assets. The aliens had observed exactly what they were meant to see: 12 major bases and 400 visible warships. What's our actual fleet strength? Chen asked, though he knew the numbers by heart. Currently operational, 4,600 combat vessels of all classes, with an additional 2,800 reserve units that can be activated within 72 hours, Colonel Martinez reported. Additionally, we have confirmed alliance commitments from the Centauri colonies, Tau Ceti Federation, and Wolf 359 Consortium. Chen allowed himself a slight smile. Humanity had spent the past century not just defending Earth, but establishing colonies and alliances throughout local space. The aliens had focused exclusively on humanity's homeworld, while completely missing the broader human presence in the galaxy. Ground forces status? All planetary militias are at full readiness. Total active military personnel across all human colonies number approximately 60 million, with reserve forces totaling another 140 million. Additionally, civilian defense preparations are complete on all major worlds. The numbers represented the culmination of human military philosophy developed through centuries of conflict. Rather than maintaining large standing armies, humanity had created a system where every colony world contributed to collective defense while maintaining local autonomy. The result was a military force far larger and more flexible than any centralized empire could efficiently maintain. Admiral Krelthis felt the familiar satisfaction of a perfectly executed approach as his fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human system. 800 Imperial warships materialized in perfect formation, their dark hulls absorbing light and radiating the menace of unstoppable conquest. Admiral, we are receiving communication attempts from multiple human installations, reported Communications Officer Veltar. Display the primary contact, Krelthis commanded. The main screen activated to show a human military officer seated in what appeared to be a command center. The human wore insignia indicating senior rank, though. Imperial intelligence had not yet decoded their military hierarchy completely. Imperial Fleet, this is General Marcus Chen, Supreme Commander of Colonial Defense Forces. You are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Krelthis studied the human's expression, noting the calm confidence that seemed genuine rather than forced. It was an admirable display of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. General Chen, I am Admiral Krelthis of the Kethvar Imperial Navy. Your world has been selected for integration into the Empire. Surrender now, and your population will be treated according to Imperial standards for cooperative species. Chen leaned forward slightly, his expression remaining calm. Admiral, I believe your intelligence regarding human capabilities may be inadequate for making such demands. Perhaps you should reconsider your position. The human's response intrigued. Krelthis, most primitive species either surrendered immediately when faced with Imperial power, or made desperate threats they could not fulfill. This human seemed genuinely confident, despite facing impossible odds. General, our reconnaissance has provided complete intelligence regarding your defensive capabilities. You command approximately 400 combat vessels against our force of 800 advanced warships. Your ground installations, while numerous, lack the technology to effectively resist Imperial occupation. Chen smiled, and something about that expression made Krelthis feel the first stirring of unease he had experienced in decades of conquest. Admiral, your reconnaissance was indeed thorough for what it observed. However, human military doctrine emphasizes redundancy and distributed assets. What your scouts detected represents approximately 8% of our actual defensive capability. Before Krelthis could respond, his tactical displays erupted in warnings as thousands of new contacts appeared throughout the system. Ships emerged from hidden bases inside asteroids, rose from concealed installations on moons and planets, and decloaked from stealth positions throughout local space. This is impossible, Morthek whispered, staring at displays that showed human ships outnumbering the Imperial fleet by more than 5-1. Admiral Krelthis watched in growing horror as the tactical situation reversed completely within minutes. His invasion force, which had approached with overwhelming numerical superiority, now found itself surrounded by an enemy fleet that appeared to materialize from empty space. Admiral, General Chen continued calmly, you're currently facing the Third Fleet, our local defensive force. Would you like to reconsider your demands for surrender? Krelthis realized that every principle of Imperial conquest doctrine had been violated. The humans had not concentrated their forces in obvious locations. They had not revealed their true capabilities during reconnaissance. Most disturbingly, they had allowed the Imperial fleet to approach while maintaining perfect intelligence regarding Imperial intentions and capabilities. How? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Admiral, humanity learned long ago that survival requires preparation for threats that haven't yet materialized. We've been preparing for this kind of invasion for over 2 centuries. As if responding to his words, additional human forces continued appearing throughout the system. Massive battleships emerged from camouflaged positions, while smaller vessels swarmed from hidden bases like angry insects defending their hive. This is still only our local defensive force, Chen added. Would you like us to demonstrate our full capabilities? Scout Commander Thexara watched from her cloaked reconnaissance vessel as the situation deteriorated beyond any possibility of Imperial victory. Her preliminary intelligence, which had seemed so thorough and accurate, had missed the vast majority of human military strength. The humans had somehow hidden not just individual installations, but entire fleets from Imperial surveillance. Commander, Fextel called urgently. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the human homeworld itself. Something is rising from beneath the surface. Thexara turned her attention to long-range sensors which showed enormous structures emerging from what appeared to be natural terrain on the human planet. As she watched in fascination and growing dread, entire mountain ranges split open to reveal massive weapons platforms that dwarfed anything in Imperial arsenals. Sub-Commander, those are planetary defense cannons. Each one appears capable of destroying our largest warships with a single shot. The revelation struck her like a physical blow. The humans had not simply hidden their fleet assets, They had concealed weapons installations of unprecedented scale directly beneath the surface of their homeworld. Imperial reconnaissance, which had focused on detecting obvious military targets, had completely missed defensive systems that could have remained hidden indefinitely. "Commander, we need to warn the fleet. Admiral Krelthis has no idea what he's facing." Thexara considered her options. Imperial military doctrine required reconnaissance units to maintain surveillance and gather intelligence regardless of tactical developments. However, the current situation had moved far beyond standard reconnaissance parameters. "Transmit our observations to the Admiral immediately. Include all sensor data regarding human defensive capabilities and recommend immediate withdrawal." As her message raced toward the Imperial fleet, Thexara realized that she was witnessing the first military defeat in Kethvar Imperial history. The humans had not simply defended themselves, they had orchestrated a complete reversal of the tactical situation while maintaining the illusion of vulnerability. Admiral Krelthis received Thexara's intelligence update just as human forces completed their deployment throughout the system. The reconnaissance data confirmed his worst fears. The humans possessed not only superior numbers, but defensive installations capable of destroying his entire fleet. "Admiral, the humans are transmitting again," Veltar announced. General Chen reappeared on the main screen, his expression now showing a mixture of determination and what might have been sympathy. "Admiral Krelthis, you now have complete information regarding human defensive capabilities. Your reconnaissance was thorough, but inadequate. We've been watching your empire's expansion for decades, preparing for this exact scenario." Krelthis felt the weight of complete defeat settling over him. In 43 conquests, he had never faced a situation where withdrawal was the only option for fleet survival. "General Chen, how did you hide so much from our surveillance?" "Imperial reconnaissance technology is the most advanced in the galaxy." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Admiral, your technology is indeed impressive. However, you've been conquering species that think like your empire. Centralized command, obvious installations, predictable tactics. Humanity learned through centuries of warfare that survival requires adaptation, redundancy, and the willingness to prepare for threats that might never materialize. You were expecting us?" "Admiral, we've been expecting someone like you for over a century. When we achieved spaceflight and began exploring the galaxy, we realized that we were probably not alone. We also realized that not every species we encountered would be friendly." The simple truth of the statement struck Krelthis with devastating clarity. The humans had prepared for invasion, not because they knew the Empire existed, but because they understood that hostile contact was inevitable in a galaxy full of intelligent life. "What are your terms for our withdrawal?" he asked, the words bitter in his mouth. Chen leaned back in his chair, consulting with advisors who remained off-screen. "Admiral, you will return to your empire with complete intelligence regarding human capabilities. You will inform your leadership that humanity is prepared to defend itself and its allies against any threat. However, we are also prepared to engage in peaceful contact and cooperation with species that approach us with respect rather than conquest." Krelthis nodded, understanding the message clearly. The Kethvar Empire could choose between war and diplomacy, but conquest was no longer an option. "And if my empire chooses war anyway?" General Chen's expression became deadly serious. "Admiral, what you're seeing here is our defensive posture. If your empire declares war on humanity, you'll discover what our offensive capabilities look like. I strongly recommend peaceful coexistence." As the Imperial fleet began its humiliating withdrawal from human space, Krelthis realized that the galaxy had changed forever. For the first time in Imperial history, they had encountered a species that was not only capable of defending itself, but had been specifically preparing for exactly this kind of contact. The age of easy conquest was over, and the Kethvar Empire would have to learn an entirely new way of interacting with other species. The humans had demonstrated that technological superiority meant nothing without accurate intelligence, and that assumptions could be fatal when dealing with an enemy that refused to follow expected patterns. As the last Imperial ship vanished into hyperspace, humanity began the process of revealing its true presence in the galaxy. not as a single world to be conquered, but as a growing interstellar civilization that had been quietly preparing for this moment for generations. Part 2 3. The Price of Arrogance. The Imperial Council chamber on Kethvar Prime had never hosted a gathering quite like this one. Admiral Krelthus stood before the assembled leadership of the Empire, delivering a report that challenged every assumption upon which their civilization was built. Around the massive circular table sat the most powerful beings in known space, their expressions ranging from disbelief to fury as they absorbed the magnitude of their defeat. Emperor Sektar, whose dynasty had ruled the Empire for 8 centuries, leaned forward in his ornate throne, his ancient eyes burning with an intensity that had intimidated countless subordinates. At nearly 400 years old, he had overseen the conquest of 37 worlds personally, and the concept of military defeat was entirely foreign to his experience. Admiral Krelthus, the Emperor's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. You are reporting that a primitive species with inferior technology successfully repelled an Imperial invasion force using deception and hidden assets. Explain how this is possible. Krelthus activated the holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber, showing the tactical recordings from the failed invasion. The images spoke more eloquently than words. Imperial warships surrounded by thousands of human vessels that had materialized from apparently empty space. Your Imperial Majesty, the humans do not follow conventional military doctrine. Rather than concentrating their forces in obvious locations, they have created distributed defensive networks that remained completely hidden from our reconnaissance. Our intelligence indicated 400 combat vessels. Their actual fleet strength exceeded 4,800 active ships. War Marshal Kexithara, the Empire's senior military strategist, studied the display with growing alarm. This level of deception should be impossible. Our surveillance technology can detect energy signatures through planetary crusts and identify military installations from standard orbital distances. War Marshal, the humans appear to have specifically designed their defenses to counter exactly that type of surveillance. They used natural geological features to mask energy signatures, employed advanced stealth technology we had not encountered previously, and most significantly, they maintained the appearance of a weak defensive posture while preparing for invasion. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The Kethvar Empire's entire military strategy was based on superior reconnaissance, followed by overwhelming force applied to identified targets. The humans had systematically defeated every aspect of that strategy, while maintaining perfect knowledge of Imperial capabilities and intentions. Intelligence Director Morketh raised her voice from across the chamber. Admiral, are you suggesting that this primitive species possesses surveillance capabilities superior to our own? Krelthus consulted his tactical notes before responding. Director, the humans demonstrated detailed knowledge of our fleet composition, arrival time, and battle plan. They were monitoring our reconnaissance activities in real time, while successfully concealing their true defensive capabilities. I can only conclude that their intelligence-gathering methods are significantly more advanced than we believed possible. Emperor Sektar rose from his throne, his imposing figure casting shadows across the chamber. In 8 centuries of rule, he had never faced a challenge to imperial power from an external source. The concept that the Empire could be outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive was almost incomprehensible. What is your assessment of their actual military capabilities? He demanded. Your Imperial Majesty, based on what we observed, the humans possess fleet strength comparable to our own with defensive installations that exceed anything in Imperial arsenals. More concerning, they demonstrated tactical flexibility and strategic planning that suggests extensive preparation for exactly this type of conflict. War Marshal Kexithara accessed her personal data display, reviewing intelligence reports from the past several decades. Admiral, our expansion in that sector of the galaxy has been carefully planned for over 50 years. Are you suggesting the humans have been preparing for our arrival? War Marshal, they stated explicitly that they have been preparing for hostile contact with unknown species for over a century. They were not specifically expecting the Empire, but they were prepared for any technologically advanced aggressive civilization. The statement hung in the air like a death sentence for imperial expansion doctrine. The Empire had succeeded through 43 conquests because they always faced species that were unprepared for systematic invasion. The humans represented something entirely new, a civilization that had anticipated the threat and prepared accordingly. Your Imperial Majesty, Intelligence Director Morketh spoke carefully, if the humans have been preparing for invasion by unknown species, they may have developed countermeasures for tactics we have not yet employed. Our standard conquest protocols may be completely ineffective against their defensive systems. Emperor Sektar considered this possibility with growing unease. The Empire's military doctrine had remained unchanged for centuries because it had proven universally successful. The idea that an entire strategic framework might require fundamental revision was deeply disturbing. Admiral Krelthus, what did you learn about their allies and colonial presence? Krelthus activated additional display layers, showing human presence throughout local space. Your Imperial Majesty, the humans have established extensive colonial networks throughout their local stellar region. They appear to have formal military alliances with several other species, creating a defensive coalition that spans multiple star systems. War Marshal Kexthara leaned forward in her chair, studying the tactical display with professional alarm. Admiral, you're describing a regional power block, not a single isolated world. How did our intelligence fail to detect this level of organization? War Marshal, the humans and their allies appear to have deliberately maintained low profiles while building defensive capabilities. They avoided the typical signs of aggressive expansion that would have attracted Imperial attention, instead focusing on quiet colonization and alliance building. The revelation struck at the heart of Imperial strategy. The Empire typically targeted isolated worlds that could be conquered without triggering broader conflicts. The humans had created exactly the kind of mutual defense network that Imperial planners worked carefully to avoid. 3 days later, Scout Commander Thexara found herself in an unprecedented situation, requesting formal audience with the Imperial Council to provide additional intelligence that contradicted her original reconnaissance report. Standing in the same chamber where she had once briefed leadership on easy conquest targets, she now faced the task of explaining how completely she had misjudged human capabilities. Scout Commander, Emperor Sektar addressed her directly. Your preliminary report suggested that Target World 774 represented a standard primitive civilization suitable for routine conquest. Explain your intelligence failure. Thexara had spent the past 72 hours reviewing every aspect of her reconnaissance mission, trying to understand how she had missed so much. The answers she had found were deeply troubling for Imperial expansion strategy. Your Imperial Majesty, my reconnaissance followed standard Imperial protocols that have proven effective across 43 successful conquests. I observed the target world for extended periods, cataloged visible military installations, and assessed apparent fleet strength using proven analytical methods. Yet you missed 90% of their actual defensive capabilities, War Marshal, Kexthara observed coldly. War Marshal, the humans deliberately created false impressions of their actual strength. They maintained obvious military installations that were clearly visible to surveillance, while concealing the vast majority of their actual defenses. More significantly, they used our own reconnaissance activities to gather intelligence about Imperial capabilities and intentions. Intelligence Director Morketh accessed her display screens, reviewing Thexara's original surveillance data. Scout Commander, are you suggesting that the humans were aware of your presence throughout the reconnaissance mission? Director, I now believe the humans detected our surveillance activities almost immediately and used our presence to their advantage. They allowed us to observe exactly what they wanted us to see, while simultaneously gathering detailed intelligence about Imperial technology and tactics. The implications were staggering. Imperial cloaking technology was considered absolutely superior to any detection method possessed by primitive civilizations. The possibility that the humans had not only detected Imperial reconnaissance but actively manipulated it suggested technological capabilities far beyond what anyone had imagined. Emperor Sektar rose from his throne and walked to the holographic display, studying the tactical recordings of human defensive installations emerging from concealment. Scout Commander, in your professional assessment, how long have the humans been preparing for this type of conflict? Thexara consulted her analytical data before responding. Your Imperial Majesty, based on the scale and sophistication of their hidden installations, I estimate they have been conducting systematic defensive preparations for at least a century, possibly longer. The level of coordination between their various defensive systems suggests planning that spans multiple generations. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of human preparation became clear. The Empire was facing not just a species with superior numbers, but a civilization that had spent decades specifically preparing to fight technologically advanced invaders. War Marshal Kexathera stood and approached the tactical display. Scout Commander, what is your assessment of human offensive capabilities? Can they threaten Imperial worlds directly? War Marshal, the humans demonstrated technological capabilities I had not previously encountered. Their stealth systems, energy, weapons, and defensive installations all suggest research programs focused specifically on countering Imperial-type technology. If they possess similar offensive systems, they could pose a direct threat to Imperial territory. Meanwhile, in human space, the aftermath of the Kethvar withdrawal had triggered the largest military mobilization in human history. General Chen stood in the expanded command center, watching as defensive preparations that had been decades in the making shifted toward offensive capabilities. Director Kim, what's our intelligence assessment of Kethvar Imperial territory? Chen asked. Sarah Kim activated her comprehensive display showing Kethvar space and the 43 conquered worlds under their control. General, the Empire controls a significant portion of this galactic region, but their expansion has created strategic vulnerabilities. They maintain garrison forces on conquered worlds, but most of their military strength is concentrated in mobile fleets. Chen studied the tactical situation with professional interest. What about the conquered populations? Are they loyal to the Empire? Intelligence suggests that Imperial control relies heavily on technological superiority and the threat of overwhelming force. Most conquered species provide labor and resources but have no loyalty to Imperial rule. If Imperial military power were seriously challenged, subject populations might become restive. The assessment confirmed Chen's strategic analysis. The Kethvar Empire had grown powerful through conquest, but that same expansion had created internal pressures that could be exploited if Imperial military dominance was successfully challenged. Colonel Martinez, status report on Allied forces. Colonel Martinez consulted his communication displays before responding. General, all human colonial governments have activated full military protocols. The Centauri Defense Force, Tau Ceti, Federation, and Wolf 359 Consortium have committed their entire military assets to joint operations. Combined Allied fleet strength now exceeds 7,000 combat vessels. Chen nodded with satisfaction. The Human Alliance Network, built carefully over decades of diplomatic effort, had proven its value in the face of external threat. What the Kethvar Empire saw as primitive colonial settlements were actually fortified worlds with their own defensive fleets and ground forces. What's our assessment of Imperial fleet strength? Based on intelligence gathered during their invasion attempt, we estimate total Imperial fleet strength at approximately 6,000 combat vessels, with about half deployed in garrison duties across conquered worlds. Their home fleet probably numbers around 3,000 ships available for major operations. The numbers suggested that human and allied forces had achieved rough parity with the Kethvar Empire. But Chen understood that simple numerical comparisons meant little in interstellar warfare. Victory would depend on strategy, technology, and the willingness to sustain losses over extended periods. Director Kim, have we received any additional intelligence regarding Imperial intentions? General, our long-range monitoring stations have detected increased military activity throughout Imperial space. They appear to be recalling garrison fleets and mobilizing reserve forces. We should assume they're preparing for a major military response to their defeat. Chen had expected such a reaction. The Kethvar Empire had built its power on the perception of invincibility. Allowing a military defeat to go unanswered would threaten their control over conquered populations and invite challenges from other species. Colonel Martinez, initiate Operation Starfall. It's time to demonstrate that humanity is prepared for offensive operations as well as defensive ones. As orders flowed out to human and allied forces throughout local space, the most ambitious military operation in human history began to take shape. Rather than waiting for the Empire to return with larger forces, humanity would carry the fight directly to Imperial territory. Back on Keithvar Prime, Emperor Sektar made a decision that would determine the fate of his empire. Rather than accepting the defeat and seeking diplomatic solutions, he chose to escalate the conflict in the hope of maintaining Imperial prestige and power. War Marshal Kexithara, you will mobilize every available Imperial vessel for a final campaign against the Human Alliance. I want 3,000 ships, our most advanced weapons systems, and ground forces sufficient to occupy their entire colonial network. War Marshal Kexithara hesitated before responding. Your Imperial Majesty, such a mobilization would leave our conquered worlds virtually undefended. If the campaign fails, we risk losing control over our entire territory. War Marshal, if we allow this defeat to stand, we will lose control anyway. Subject populations throughout the Empire will see that Imperial power can be successfully challenged. We must demonstrate that resistance to Imperial will results in complete destruction. The Emperor's decision reflected the fundamental weakness of conquest-based civilizations. Having built power through force, the Empire could only respond to challenges with greater force, regardless of strategic consequences. 3 weeks later, Scout Commander Thexara found herself aboard the flagship of the largest Imperial fleet ever assembled, watching as 3,000 Kethvar warships approached human space. The fleet represented the Empire's entire mobile, military capability, stripped from defensive positions throughout Imperial territory. Scout Commander, Admiral Krelthis addressed her from his command station. Your assessment of human defensive preparations? Thexara studied her sensor displays, noting the complete absence of human vessels in the outer system approaches. Admiral, I detect no significant human presence in the patrol zones where we encountered them previously. Either they have withdrawn to more defensive positions or what, Scout Commander? Admiral, given their previous demonstration of superior intelligence capabilities, they may be aware of our approach and have chosen not to reveal their positions until we commit to specific tactical moves. Admiral Krelthis considered this possibility. The humans had already demonstrated the ability to completely conceal major military assets while maintaining perfect surveillance of Imperial activities. The absence of visible defenders might indicate weakness, or it might represent another layer of tactical deception. Admiral, called Fleet Tactical Officer Morthek from his station, we are receiving a communication from the human homeworld. Display it, Krelthis commanded. General Chen appeared on the main screen, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood military officers representing every human colony and allied species, creating a visual representation of the coalition arrayed against Imperial forces. Admiral Krelthis, this is General Chen. You have returned with a larger fleet, but you are still operating under incorrect assumptions about human capabilities and intentions. Krelthis stepped forward, determined to project Imperial strength despite his growing unease. General Chen, the Kethvar Empire has assembled 3,000 warships for this campaign. Your alliance cannot match such overwhelming force. Chen's expression remained calm, but something in his eyes suggested confidence that went far beyond mere bravado. Admiral, you're assuming this will be a defensive engagement. You may want to check your long-range sensors. At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial fleet as sensors detected massive contacts appearing throughout the system. However, these were not defensive positions around human worlds. Instead, human and allied fleets were emerging from concealment at strategic locations that would allow them to attack Imperial supply lines and retreat routes. This is impossible, Morthek whispered, staring at tactical displays that showed human forces positioned to cut off Imperial withdrawal. How did they position forces behind our fleet without detection? Thexara realized with growing horror that the humans had once again demonstrated superior strategic planning. While the Imperial fleet had focused on assembling overwhelming numbers for direct assault, the humans had positioned their forces to control the tactical environment completely. Admiral Krelthis, General Chen continued, "You have just committed your entire mobile fleet to a battle zone where we control every strategic advantage. Your forces are surrounded, outnumbered, and cut off from retreat. I strongly recommend you consider surrender." On the tactical display, the true scope of human planning became apparent. The Imperial fleet found itself in the center of a carefully constructed trap, with human forces controlling every approach and exit from the system. More disturbingly, additional contacts were appearing on long-range sensors, indicating human forces moving toward Imperial territory, while the main fleet was engaged. "General Chen," Krelthis said, his voice barely steady, "what are your terms?" "Admiral, the Kethvar Empire will immediately cease all military operations against human and allied territory. You will withdraw all Imperial forces to pre-war boundaries and release all conquered populations that wish to establish independence. In exchange, human forces will not advance into core Imperial territory." The terms amounted to the complete dismantling of the Kethvar Empire as an expansionist power. However, the alternative appeared to be the destruction of Imperial civilization entirely. "And if the Empire refuses these terms?" General Chen's expression became grimly determined. "Admiral, while you've been assembling this fleet, human and allied forces have been positioning for offensive operations throughout Imperial space. Every conquered world in your empire is currently being offered liberation by human forces. Your choice is between negotiated withdrawal and total war that will end Imperial power permanently." Thexara watched the final collapse of everything she had believed about Imperial invincibility. The humans had not merely defended themselves, they had positioned themselves to dismantle the entire Imperial system, while the Empire's military strength was concentrated in a single vulnerable location. 6 months later, Scout Commander Thexara stood on the observation deck of a human vessel, watching as the last Imperial garrison withdrew from the world, designated in Imperial records as Conquest 37. The planet's native population, freed after decades of Imperial rule, was celebrating their liberation with festivities that could be seen from orbit. "Commander Thexara," a voice behind her said in perfect Kethvar, "thank you for joining us for this historic moment." She turned to see General Chen approaching, his expression showing none of the triumphalism she might have expected from a conqueror. Instead, he seemed genuinely pleased to witness the restoration of freedom to another world. "General Chen, I must ask you something that has troubled me since our first encounter. How did humanity develop such sophisticated military capabilities while maintaining the appearance of a primitive civilization?" Chen joined her at the observation port, looking down at the celebrating population below. "Commander, humanity learned long ago that survival requires preparation for threats that may never materialize. We didn't develop our defenses because we knew the Empire existed. We developed them because we understood that hostile contact was inevitable in a galaxy full of intelligent life. But the scale of your preparations suggests planning that spanned generations. How did your species maintain such focus without a specific threat to motivate your efforts?" "Commander, humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We hoped that when we met other species they would be peaceful and cooperative, but we prepared for the possibility that they might not be." Thexara considered this philosophy, which was fundamentally different from Imperial thinking. The Empire had always focused on accumulating power to threaten others, while the humans had focused on developing capabilities to defend against threats. "General, what will happen to the Imperial refugees who choose not to return to Kethvar space?" "Commander, any Kethvar citizen who wishes to live peacefully among humans or our allies is welcome to do so. We're not interested in conquest or revenge. We simply want the freedom to develop our civilization without external threats." As they watched the liberation celebration below, Thexara realized that she was witnessing the emergence of a new type of galactic civilization. The humans had demonstrated that it was possible to be powerful without being aggressive, to be prepared for war while working for peace. The Kethvar Empire still existed, but its expansion had ended permanently. The 43 conquered worlds had been liberated, and the threat of imperial conquest no longer hung over the galaxy. More importantly, other species had seen that technological superiority and military arrogance could be defeated by careful preparation and strategic thinking. 6 months after the liberation of the last imperial conquest, the galaxy was a very different place. Human exploration vessels were making peaceful contact with dozens of species that had previously hidden from imperial expansion, while former imperial subjects were building new civilizations based on cooperation rather than conquest. Scout Commander Thexara had chosen to remain in human space, serving as a cultural liaison between her people and the growing alliance of free worlds. She had learned that being defeated was not the same as being destroyed, and that some defeats could lead to better outcomes than victory. The Kethvar Empire's attempt to conquer humanity had resulted in the complete transformation of galactic civilization. The age of conquest was over, replaced by an era of cooperation and mutual defense that would shape the galaxy for generations to come. As she stood in the command center of a human exploration vessel heading toward uncharted space, Thexara reflected on the lesson her species had learned at such great cost. In a galaxy full of intelligent life, the greatest strength comes not from the ability to conquer others, but from the wisdom to prepare for any challenge while working toward peaceful coexistence. The humans had taught the galaxy that some prey, when cornered, reveals itself to be the apex predator. The Kethvar Empire had learned this lesson too late to maintain their dominance, but perhaps just in time to survive in a galaxy where cooperation had replaced conquest as the path to prosperity. Epilogue. Years later, when galactic historians studied the fall of the Kethvar Empire and the rise of the human alliance, they would identify the moment when Scout Commander Thexara first observed Earth as the turning point that changed everything. Her reconnaissance report, so carefully prepared according to imperial doctrine, had missed the fundamental truth about humanity. They were not a primitive species waiting to be conquered, but a warrior civilization that had been preparing for galactic conflict for over a century. The galaxy was safer for that mistake, and the future belonged to species wise enough to choose cooperation over conquest.